Farming. Farming is a very unique and important job for the colonists to survive. Farming is a very important job in today's society. It is still a job today and provides about 80% of the world's food. This shows how important it is, and 80% is a lot. Farming has different aspects. I will be teaching you about livestock, agriculture, and farm life. It is gone from using oxen and horses to using tractors, which don't get tired or sick. And the first lifestyle I'll be talking about is livestock. Livestock is very important because that is how the colonists got many different types of meats. Some examples of meat are chicken and pork and cow. Some livestock the colonists had were goats, pigs, cows. They also had chickens. In this clip, I'll be teaching you about the colonists' involvement with chickens. So pretty much I'm just going to be teaching you guys about chickens and what their involvement with the colonists, or the colonists' involvement with the chickens. So first of all, chickens were used because it was poultry, so the colonists could get food, as in eggs, and also once the bird, and then they could kill the birds for chicken, and they got food off of that, and then egg was also their food. And so the chicken's food is pretty much just grass and a bunch of scraps. The women usually fed the chickens. The men also did it, depending on the scale of the farm, but it was pretty much just a bunch of scraps, pretty much corn, apples, anything that colonists didn't eat or were scraps, they would give it to the chickens, and then the chickens would eat it. And chickens are just fine with grass. Just give them you just had to give them a field of grass, and the chickens would eat it. Definitely take time for them to eat it, but they have food, and then the chickens give the colonists food. It's like a repeating cycle. So the area is fenced in. Sometimes it was at the back of the house, so the women could do it easier. Sometimes it wasn't at the back of the house, and it was more like just a bigger pasture. But it really just depended on the size of the farm, because different size farms have different resources. And basic needs for chicken is food and water. So for their food, like I already said, it's scraps, but then but sometimes for food, it could have been like a mix, and that mix would consist of like kernels, sometimes small nuts, and just like the corn itself, as you can see there. This is like pretty much what the colonists would feed them. There's no special pellets or anything, just food scraps, and chickens would eat it. And so chickens, if you have a rooster, if they had one, they gave babies, and the chicks need something to eat. But it wasn't very hard for the colonists, because all the chicks ate was grass. There was no special food. They just gave them the pasture of grass, and they could eat. If it was all dirt and the chickens ate it all, as you can see here, something like this, then the women would start throwing out more food, and the chicken would still have food to eat. So they didn't have something like this, where it was a nice enclosed area, just a big pasture that was enclosed around. And because there was lots of people there, no animal really came. Some areas had a bedding. There was like an area of bedding where the chickens could sleep. I think, or based on what I've researched, most farms or chicken areas had some sort of bedding, like a coop, which is what that was, so the chickens could sleep because it got cold. But that was pretty much it. And then once the chickens went out and did their stuff, the colonists would go and collect the eggs, fresh eggs from the coop. And once they collected them, they just take them out, go bring them inside, and the colonists had food. So it was a very simple process. Chickens wasn't super hard, and it's kind of easy to understand. Pretty much just give them food and water, and then chickens give you eggs. So you give them food and water, chickens give you eggs, and you just got to make sure they're inside so no animal could take them. There's other animals that eat chickens in pretty much all the states that had farms, and that was pretty much it. So in the northern states there were no slaves, which meant that the men and the women would feed the chickens, do it normally like a family, and they would do it normally. If there were slaves, the slaves would be feeding it, and the women slaves would be feeding them. Because even in the states, the women slaves are like helping for the women task and the household chores, and one of them, if the chicken area was by the back of their house, it was feeding the chicken scraps, and that's what the women slaves would do. And that's pretty much it to chickens. Just give them an open pasture with food and water, give them an area to sleep at night, and they're pretty much good to go. And they do their own things. So that's it for chickens. Livestock was very important to the colonists' survival. They also got manure from cows, which helped fertilize plants. Next, we're going to move on to agriculture.
Agriculture, which is crop farming, was another important part of colonist survival. It was important during colonist times because farmers grew enough food to feed their family. Sometimes they grew enough food to use it to trade. Farming was how some colonists made money. Probably one of the most important contributions to colonial food was the adoption of Native American agricultural practice and crops. The crops were chiefly corn and tobacco. Corn looked differently depending on where it was grown. A harvest gathered by colonial farmers included an extensive number of crops: beans, squash, peas, okra, pumpkins, peppers, tomatoes, and peanuts. Maize or corn, and later rice and potatoes, were grown in place of wheat and barley, which were common European crops that did not take easily to U.S. easternly soil. There were no machines back then, right? Because there were no machines because it was so long ago. So the farms used slaves, oxes, and horses. If it was a big farm, then only men did the farming and women helped with household chores, or they were in charge of animal husbandry, which is management of domesticated animals. But if it was a small farm, women slaves helped with the farm. Also, if the colonists were in a northern state with no slaves, then only the men did the farming. The farms used slaves and oxes because farming was so labor intensive. Everything was pretty much done by hand other than pulling the plows, which was done by oxen. Now we're going to talk about farm life. Farm life was very hard and a very hard position to do because there is so much physical labor. There's also always work to be done on a farm. People on a farm worked from sun up to sun down. Men worked hard in the field all day long. If they weren't harvesting or planting, they were fixing fences, chopping wood, and other work that needed to be done. Also, which is very surprising, in many areas, there wasn't public school like there is today, so a lot of farm children did not get any formal education. Boys often learned how to read or write from their father or the local minister. Sons were put to work with their father as soon as they could, and girls, they went to help their mother, as you can see. You didn't need to go to school to do this job, but as a trial and error profession, you needed strong problem solving skills. For example, a farmer often looks for the best way to raise and harvest their crops. As a farmer, it's important to know how to react and how to make effective decisions in this type of scenario. Farming is all based on weather and climate. Some areas farming was difficult because of how the temperature was, and in the middle colonies they were able to plant more than one crop per season. Modern machines make farming so much easier and faster. They also eliminate the need for slaves or as much physical labor, which is a good thing. This is all for today on farming, folks, and see you next time.